Welcome to the Influencer's Journey. This is where we explore the transformative power of mindset and the stories behind leaders who have shaped their own path to remarkable success. Each week, we embark on a journey to uncover the beliefs, habits, and inner strength required to not just be seen, but felt as a true person of influence.
Are you of the belief that position and title gives you the right to lead? Or do you believe that someone can effectively lead without a title? Today's topic, leading in the new era, why authority, force, and control is no longer enough. I am your host, Suzan Hart, and I am so thrilled you are with us today. In today's episode, we will explore why a new leadership mindset is critical to reshaping our organizations, uniting our communities, and allowing us to leave behind the divisive tactics of the past. I know that last line, divisive tactics of the past, but we will definitely get into this. All right, so are you guys ready? Because I'm excited, and I have to say at the same time, I'm humbled and just so present to this moment as I sit down with this beautiful woman that you see beside me. We met, we had a conversation, and I actually thought she rented space in my head. Have you ever had that happen? Where you have someone and you're just like, oh my, we think alike. So let me tell you a little bit about this beautiful soul. Well, first of all, she's an author and branding consultant. Now, I got to experience a little taste of the branding consultant part. Wow. So that's the first thing I want to. She is a design thinking lecturer at Griffith College in Dublin. So we're coming a ways. I got her up. All right. She has a master's in training, education, and development. And she's the founder of Flourish by Design and the Flourish by Design and the Inner Design Academy for Feminine Leadership. But get her commitment. Her commitment, I would say calling right now, and passion is to support personal identity development and creative thinking. So for us to step into all of who we are and be exceptionally creative with this. What I love about her is I always love someone who has the courage to follow their calling, follow what they are called here to do. Please help me welcome Carolyn Murphy.
Thank you, Suzanne. Wow, what an amazing introduction.
How are you?
Fantastic.
Okay, so first of all, you got to tell everybody where you're from, because I feel like I'm going around the world.
And you might have heard from my accent. I'm from Ireland, and I'm in Dublin here at the moment. So yeah, so lovely to be here sharing the space with you.
Oh, likewise. So just to give everybody who's listening a little bit of a backdrop, as you know, I went to Bali to keynote. Thank you, Michelle. And after, as the summit progressed, all these beautiful women, it was a women's summit, were delivering workshops, and I got to select. Now, I got to say, the selection was challenging because there was a lot of interesting topics. However, I saw your topic, Carolyn, and I said, okay, I want to be in this room. And as Carolyn presented and unfold, and what I loved about it, she was talking about branding, but she was talking about it from a mindset perspective. So you know, I'm all ears because that's my jam. And you walked us through a beautiful process. And then I got to connect with you for just a few minutes. And I remember as I walked away in that connection, I said, I need to talk more with this woman. So we sat down, and when we got home, we jumped on Zoom or we jumped on WhatsApp, and we had our first fireworks conversation in my mind. So that's how we came together. Where I want you to stay at, Carolyn, is to just give everybody a little bit of an insight into your journey that brings you to this place.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share my story. And I was thinking about before we came on, where would I begin with this story? And I think especially because we're framing this around leadership, I think the most pivotal point for me around, really getting interested in leadership was the story around my daughter, Lauren. So Lauren is 19 at the moment, and she's just finished her secondary school education, and she's got a place in a prestigious college here, design college, and she's moving on to third level. But it's a transitions period for us, which, these are the places that I'm really interested in, the identity development for women, because in those spaces we have a chance to reform ourselves as such. And that happened when she was 13 as well. So she was finishing primary school, going into secondary school. And I actually found that, I had spent 10 years or, before that, before she had entered into primary school, I spent a long time trying to find a really nice school that I feel that she would flourish in, because I had grown up in the countryside, in a little village under the Blackstairs Mountains in County Wexford, and beautiful, idyllic atmosphere and environment for a child to grow up in. So when I moved to the city, I was trying to emulate that as best I could for my daughter. Even though I was living in the city and I wanted to have all the opportunities of living in a city, I wanted to have that beautiful environment for my daughter as well. So I selected a beautiful school, and it was very open to parents being involved. It was an educate together school, so all the different cultures were promoted to come together and to be very inclusive, so that we could have this, beautiful atmosphere and environment for the children to grow up in. So everybody gelled together beautifully. We had a lovely friendships that flourished and blossomed from there between the parents and the children and the teachers, because the parents were invited to participate in activities in the school, etc. So it's been about 10 years, beautiful time there, nurturing my daughter, and I had actually done the radical thing of back then, before COVID, was starting to work from home. So I decided to work from home. At the time, people thought it was very radical. What are you doing? And I said, no, I'm going to try it because I want to have my consultancy from my own home and then raise my daughter and my son that followed after that, with them in mind. So when she came to 12 or 13 and she had to basically go out into the larger world, I actually experienced such terror, to be quite honest. I actually went into a dark night of the soul. I was shocked by actually the environment and the society that she was going into. Because not only had she been kept in this bubble for that 10 years where I was, totally involved in everything, and a beautiful community she had of friends and teachers and very supported, I was actually protected in that also. And I didn't realize that actually after the 10 years, I looked out in society and I realized what it had become, and that what type of society my child was going into, and that I felt totally disempowered from that. And actually there's a famous song in Ireland we call How Can I Protect Her from This Crazy World? It's an Aslan song, if anyone knows it. It was basically that. And I just found myself, saying, how can I actually protect her in this crazy world, to be quite honest? And what can I do? And I realized there's so much that I can't control, but there are some elements that I can control. And I started to actually, my mind went into introspection because I'm a systems thinker and a design thinker. I'm trained that way. And I started to look into the really deeper problems in society. I actually bought a cottage in the west of Ireland and I started to renovate it. And it took as much time as I could in that isolation, in reflection, in contemplation, and really looking at all the thinking that humanity had done throughout time. So I actually went from ancient times right up to today to see how we had progressed as humanity. Where were we at in our thinking in society, and where were we going? So I started to get really interested in all of this And from that, I started writing books. So I wrote The Rainbow Warrior. I wrote Declare a Republic, a Free State of Mind, which is a poetry book around coming out of that conditioned mindset that we're all living in, and sometimes unaware of, and how can we become innovative within ourselves to bring our true selves to the world, to bring true leadership and to bring true change, to create a society that everyone can flourish in. That's where I started from my manifesto, I would say, Declare a Republic.
Yeah.
Literally that. And then I had been working in traditional branding for years, worked with large corporate clients around the world. And then I had been working on beautiful initiatives, worked with my husband in Venice Design. And then I decided, no, I'm going to actually create a new company called Flourish by Design, which was all about supporting our evolving society. And that, first of all, started to look like conscious branding, but it evolved into really focusing in on women in particular. Because as I studied more and more with my master's training and education, with my teaching in Griffith College, with over 100 international students that come directly into the private college to be trained in design thinking, creative thinking, and critical thinking, I realized that the difference between the female mindset and the male mindset is very different.
Yeah.
It's very, very different. So that the way the feminine mind flourishes is different to the masculine mind. And how do we develop the characteristics of the masculine along with our feminine, and to balance that so that we can be really effective leaders in the world? So it comes down to that identity development and how we can support our identity, inner identity that we perceive the world through as women, and how when that changes, we change in the world, and we can supporting that creative thinking, bring our creativity, our innate creativity to the world to solve some of the greatest problems that we have and we're all facing in society. So that's where I've really come to at this point. So I'm still studying and researching, and everything that I research and everything that I come into, I try as quickly as possible to put it into action, into a workshop or into, so it's very much emerging. And we spoke about this, Suzanne, as well, that it's very much on the cutting edge of emerging this new thought development, I would say, around leadership, especially for women, because there's such a surge of innovation coming from women. And we've seen that personally in Bali, the courageous women that we've met there that are really stepping up and making
putting
huge
their
creating an impact.
ideas in the world.
Yeah. So it's very exciting. And from, I suppose, that dark night of the soul to actually it's like soul development nearly at this stage, Yeah.
We are so in the same place in terms of, a journey of understanding the inner self. And one of the things you talked about was the embracing of the masculine and the embracing of the feminine. And, as I've done my work around mindset, and universal laws and all these things, one of them, as you know, is the law of gender. And the law of gender says that nothing can happen effectively without the feminine and the masculine. Well, we know that for bringing a child into the world. However, I don't think we know that in terms of leadership, in terms of communication, in terms of engagement, in terms of how we show up with each other and for each other. And I think when we're talking about identity development, in North America and many countries, identity development is, if you're male, it's very highly masculine energy. And identity development, if you're female, is very highly feminine energy. There isn't a healthy commingling and normalizing of the commingling of the two. And what I've realized is that in leadership, it's this commingling that is so essential to move, inspire, touch people, and to bring ideas and vision to the world.
Absolutely. It
So,
is that how we can actually marry those two, you know, because we
yeah.
can learn from, I think, from the masculine leadership. What's happened really in society is that women, when they've come into leadership roles traditionally, it has meant that they have taken on the masculine role. I suppose they've been influenced by the masculine leaders. So it's we did the workshop in Bali. It was around our role models, you know. So we've had masculine role models. We haven't had many actual feminine role models that have done it in a different way.
And in a feminine energy.
In a feminine energy. So
Yeah.
basically we're looking at now what's emerging is that how can we take, again, the beautiful, fabulous ideas that women have, but sometimes they don't have that action orientated movement forward that the masculine bring, which is amazing because they get things done, you know, they move forward, they have the confidence, they have the self-assuredness, they have the self-esteem, they have all of that in bucket loads, and it's actually what women are lacking, you know. They have the creativity and they have the I mean, there's nobody that networks like women, you know.
It's so true, so true.
We share all of our resources, and that's another element of, you know, the feminine mindset, that we naturally share resources. You know, we've done that for centuries, so it's very easy for us to share knowledge, to share resources, to support each other. And there's a huge amount of energy that comes from that, because you see that in women's groups and any networking with women's groups, everybody just rallies around each other to support each other, and it's a fabulous environment to be in. So we can take, you know, taking from the learning from the masculine, but also then flourishing at the feminine side of it. And I also see, like a conversation we had just before we come in on here, how inspirational we can be to men as well, with actually our level of empathy and how they feel like they'd love to develop that. And I've had that in mentoring sessions within my master's as well, where we had to do a mentoring session, and I was mentoring, you know, on camera, and everybody was watching it, and we were being graded on it. And the men that came up to me afterwards were like in leadership roles, CEOs, and said, "Oh my God, you know, your level of empathy and how you were able to deal with that difficult situation. We'd love to learn that." You know, so I think, again, what you say, that marriage between, and I see it like basically a dynamo nearly, when they link in together, this movement happens, and we start to move upwards in that upward spiral of innovation. Everybody is benefiting from that. Everyone's benefiting.
Absolutely.
You know?
So
Yeah.
as you can see, for everyone that's listening, this is going to be a conversation, because I have not even gotten into my questions yet. So buckle up, hold on, get ready. So if you're joining us, please let us know where you're joining us from. Please, if you're on a platform where you can comment, definitely let us know where you're coming from, what brought you out, what inspired you, who do you serve, what do you do while you're living, and get in the conversation, comment, ask questions, all those wonderful things. If you are present live and you have a friend who you know has to hear them, give them a nudge and say, "Hey, I'm listening to this live show and you got to come join us, because you got to listen to this beautiful woman who's from Dublin at the moment. Come on and invite your friends." If you're listening to the replay, #replay, and do the same things. Where are you joining us from? What do you do while you're living? Who are you called to serve? Who are your people? And comment, comment, comment. And whatever platform you're on, like, share, and subscribe if that is something that you're able to do. All right, so we are going to jump into the heart of the show. So for those of you that are joining us, welcome back to the Influencer's Journey. Today's topic: leading in the new era, why authority, force, and control is no longer enough. I am Suzanne Hart, and I am sitting down with Carolyn Murphy, who hails from Dublin. So where do we want to start this conversation. So I want to start with kind of traditional, authoritative, positional leadership. And positional leadership, as we know, relies on authority, position, control, title, privilege, all these things. And, you know, my experience is positional leadership works for a moment. It works in certain circumstance, and there's definitely circumstance where it's required. But if it's a way of being, a way of leading, it loses its effectiveness after a while. Can you talk a little bit about why you think that is?
Interesting question, it really is. And actually, I had a little thought come to mind there when you're speaking about that. And I was thinking to myself, how did he get to that position is really what I would like to know, you
Yeah,
know? Yeah.
yeah.
So again, when you say entitlement, are we sometimes just handed the position through, legacy from family? How have we worked our way up to that position? What kind of leadership, how have we treated the people on the way up? So what's the quality of the intention behind how that position was gained as such? It would be really important for me to know in a leader, for example, because
Mhm.
that is really a reflection on how that leader will treat the people underneath. So looking at that, it's very much, is your position something that you have taken a responsibility for in your understanding of the effects that every decision that you make has a huge effect on everybody else's life in the organization, and also back into their family life, so when it comes to authority, I suppose it is important to have people in positions of authority. And I think we talked about this in Bali in our conversation as well. But how do you see that yourself? So if you're in position of authority, to understand that maybe you're in that position of authority because of the capabilities that you have innately within yourself. So if you're highly educated and you've had that privilege of education, if you've had that privilege of coming from maybe a very affluent family, if you've had the privilege of being a certain color,
Mm.
you have an advantage over the vast majority of people in the world. So to me, you have a larger responsibility to the vulnerable in society then, rather than thinking that you're privileged and you're way above. To level the playing field, you need to understand that, with great ability comes greater responsibility to level the playing field, that you need to give more if you have been given more as such, so
Yeah.
that you level that playing field, that there is no, even though you might have a sense of authority or position of authority, but you are there to make sure that equilibrium is created within society.
I love how you opened this question, because it it highlights so much. So, you know, as I've looked at leadership and as I've looked at positional leadership, and particularly people who lead from that place. And what I mean by lead from that place is you know they're the leader because they remind you. You know they have authority because they wield it. You know they have privilege because, one, they let you know, or it's demonstrated in their beingness. Yeah. Um, and so for me, it is often that, you know, leadership, we think that it's a skill, we think that it's position, we think that it's title. And what I'm learning and beginning to understand is that people don't actually realize that that is not what leading is. Right. And I've come to really have this distinction between management and leadership. So when I use my position, my title, my authority, I am more managing people and moving them, or at times forcing them from point A to point B. When I'm in leadership, it's a different way of being and it's a different energy. So I love the fact that you said, how did that person get there? Because I know for myself, the journey to getting there has less to do with skill, title, and position than hard knocks, challenges, growth moments, failures. And so I want to really just explore that distinction, because I believe that my beingness, which is what I think leadership is, has a lot to do with my relationship to failure, adversity, challenge, because then I'm better able to create the equilibrium. I'm more compassionate because I have points of reference of what it felt like to not have, to be without, to fail, to fall down. So I'm gonna invite you to expand a little bit more.
Yeah, I love that, because actually it kind of mirrored my journey too, because coming from a rural community, which I suppose it's something that's innate in has always been innate in me, to know that I had a bigger purpose in the world. So
Mhm.
for me personally, it's very spiritually led, that I know it's a something I'm here to do. But I didn't actually understand what that was for an awful long time. I knew it was a calling that was always called me forth. I used to say to my mom when she was little, when I was little, saying, Mom, you don't understand, you don't understand. I have a really big important thing to do. And I've loads of things to do before then, And like you say, I didn't realize the loads of things I had to do before then was a whole lot of adversity and struggle
And
and
growth, right?
yeah, and growth and all of those things to really form and make me into somebody who I think understands that path, understands the struggles of life, understands like being surrounded by people in unemployment, understand lack of access to education, having to even to within your own family, having to try to I suppose I used to have to present a case why I should go into education or third level education, because it was just finish school and you get a job, and then wanting to breaking that mold in the mindset of my own family, then having to break the mold when I wanted to be an entrepreneur and start working for myself, and leaving actually a really good well-paid job that was senior designer, and wanting to work for myself, and that was kind of like, again, oh, a fear around that mindset again, having to break through that again within your own family background, having to constantly move through that. When you move then into education, and seeing all the glass ceilings that are there all the way along, and how you have to break those within yourself to move yourself forward, that it actually gives you that great sense of empathy, understanding
Mhm.
for the people coming up underneath you. So with my students, trying to give them all the nuggets of gold that I learned all the way along, trying to make that a fast track path for others. So that's, I have one of those poem actually called that. It's like a fast track path. So taking all of that and being able to teach that and understand that from the underneath, from the bottom up rather than the top down.
I love
I
it.
think it's really the purpose for all of that. And I think it is very difficult for leaders to lead people from all different backgrounds in society when they haven't had that lived experience of the struggle that it takes from the bottom up. So it's very important. I think it's a important part of that path, but also to understand that it's taken an awful lot more work for some people to get into positions than others, and to really to honor that, and to really to celebrate that,
Mhm.
to the resilience and the effort that is taken for so many women and men from different backgrounds that haven't had the privilege, you
You,
know.
you
Yeah.
said something that I think I'm not sure everybody caught, so
Yeah.
I'm gonna go back, and
Yeah.
because I really want to highlight it because it was such a golden, just a golden tip. You said that part of leading through and breaking the ceiling of wherever you're going, that proverbial glass ceiling, is you have to first break it within yourself. And that is such a profound statement, because I truly believe that leadership is my evolution, my breaking the glass ceiling within me, and the understanding of what it took to break it. And I think when you talk about compassion, when you talk about understanding, when you talk about cheering someone on, when you talk about being able to pull up the person who feels marginalized and disenfranchised, I think a lot of it comes from having broken through in these places yourself, so you have a relatedness to it. And I think that what you're highlighting is leadership isn't theoretical, it's doing, and leading as an example of doing, and almost being, I broke through, now I'm going to show you how to break through. I broke through, now I'm going to show you how to break through. I climbed this ladder, now I'm going to show you how to climb it. I'm going to tell you what you might want to avoid, and I'm going to be with you in the pain that comes with the misstep.
Absolutely. That's so well described there, because it's the motivation really. Because again, it looks like that all the time, continuously. What's the next glass ceiling, you know, and the bubble that we're in, that you're unconscious of, becoming aware of it, and then having to break that again. But you know, it's continuously difficult to do that. But when you know that you will be helping people behind you come forth, that you're actually might be paving a whole new way of doing something. And that's what innovation is. And
Mhm.
that's what it, you know, it is actually creating a new way, a new choice, a new possibility, a new tomorrow for society to flourish, because that's the motivation of not just the people 10 years younger, 20 years younger, but the younger generation and the children underneath us. Once we pave that way, there's a channel there for that growth to just come through and just to flourish in a much faster way. You know, again, the role modeling, and, you know, again, younger generation, they don't learn by being told in an authoritative tone.
Yeah.
They learn by example. So it's just you doing it, you trying, you falling down, you getting back up again, you making mistakes, and then finding a way, and then somehow getting a breakthrough, you know, and celebrating that everybody's watching that, everyone
Mhm.
around you. That's what leadership is.
And
Everyone's
and
watching.
I was about to say, and for most people listening, they'd go, that's leadership?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what leadership is. It is the act of doing, and it's the act of becoming. And I think, the other key thing that you said is, you said you break through, then you break through again, and you break through again, and you break through again. And I think to understand leadership is to understand a constant state of transformation. And I think when you understand that there's no place to arrive to, that is actually, in my mind, what separates authority and position, leadership from the leadership we're talking about, which is, collaborative, transformative. Because in positional, I can strive to get to the next rank in the ladder. That striving to get to the next rank in the ladder may not require the becoming of more, in terms of my personal expansion, in terms of me asking, have I expanded in the way I listen and relate to people? Have I expanded in the way I'm able to manage my energy in the face of really challenging things? Have I expanded in the way I face failure and being confronted? Have I expanded in the way of how I deal with I don't know what I'm doing, which is so much a part of leadership? Have I expanded as a being? I think for me is where we miss the mark when we talk about leadership, because we talk about a place to get to. And when you get to that place, you are a leader. And I'm kind of like, no, you just got to a place. And you may
Absolutely.
have a title or position. I'm not sure you're a leader. And for a lot of people, that's like, what do you mean?
And what's interesting about that, Susan, is actually when you're, you know, your head is down and you're trying to break through those and you know those different feelings. And I think when you realize you're a leader is when you turn around and you realize that people are being influenced by you, and you don't realize you have become an influential person in their lives by
Mhm.
your example.
And I think for me, what it has taught me is that it's not necessarily what I say, it is what I do. And it is way powerful when what I say aligns with what I do, but also with the energy to which I do it. And when you have those pieces, that's when you look up and you're like, oh, when did I become a person of influence? Um, well, it's because I'm modeling possibility. That's, how I always think about it. One of my favorite sayings, Carolyn, is that I say to myself that I am inspiration. And the first person I must inspire and influence is me. Like I need to wow me in terms of who am I being and who am I becoming. And sometimes it's a tall order. And I'll tell you, guarantee it's a scary order at times. And I know you know that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you're saying there because it's actually who you are in the end, you know. You become a sentence. And we talked about this in Bali actually, that every great leader is a sentence.
Yeah,
So you're beating a drum basically all the time with your words, but with your actions. So your words first, then your actions, putting those words into action and becoming that action for those words. And you're just an icon for that. Then you become, we talk about Barack Obama, the yes, we can, he became that because he did it, he achieved
Mhm.
what he wanted to achieve. Or, any large, world global leader, famous leader, they're all always known because of a sentence. And it's because they've lived that sentence. They became that sentence and they represented that sentence to everybody else in the world.
I have a
That became
dream.
a possibility
I
for
have a
everyone else
dream.
to achieve.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
When
yeah.
I think of Martin Luther King, um, and that I have a dream, when you go back to the beginning, when no one actually knew who this pastor was, I always remind myself that he had a dream. And no one knew what the dream was, but he had a dream. And and when we set out on the path as the dreamer, we go through that hero's journey of transformation. And it's somewhere in that journey that you have people saying, I have a dream too, and your dream is my dream. So I'm going to attach myself to your dream. But it started with that I have a dream. And the reason I believe we follow people like Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, and the list goes on is because we get the privilege of watching their transformation. And it's their transformation from the dreamer to the person who holds the dream that has us go, man, I want to be that.
Yeah.
I
And
want to
that's
be
that's
like that.
inspiration. Like you say,
Oh,
what an inspiration leaders,
yeah.
Mm.
And I think the key that I really want everyone to get, because where it comes full circle, is he didn't have title or position when he had the dream, right? He just had a dream. And and leadership was about me or he or you embracing that dream and saying, I will become that person who will hold that dream.
Mm. Oh, I love that so much, because it reminds me of actually why I became a graphic designer in the beginning. Because actually, I remember thinking about the symbol, and everybody, a logo is a symbol, and people associate a meaning to that symbol. So we might say tick, and you see Nike, or you associate a sentence to that. Just do it. That's actually,
Yeah.
that's actually the psychology and how the whole of society is actually designed around those messages. And we orientate ourselves around messages like that and messaging in the world. And eventually, when I had done the deep dive into the thinking of, where we are as humanity, I realized that some people choose to become that symbol.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it is a sacrifice. They sacrifice their life to become that.
Mm-hmm. That is so profound, because I think that is the part of leadership that we don't talk about. And so, when I think of, we're going to talk about positional leadership, authoritative leadership, those sorts of things. Those, in many ways, those are things you can put down, right? I'm done with this title. I'm stepping out because it got too hot in the kitchen, right? Or someone can say, well, we no longer need you, so we're stripping you of this title, and you can go on your way. I think when we're talking about empowered leadership that comes from who am I becoming, and a high level of mindset and emotional mastery, there isn't a putting down. It's because you have become the thing. You have become the journey. You have become the person who is holding this vision. And so there's not a putting down. And as a result, it's messy, it's sacrificial, it's scary, it's humbling. It is sometimes will shake you to your core. And I think that's where compassion is born. Because when I see someone being shaken, I can now relate to having been shaken. When I see someone who doesn't have, I remember the beginning of my journey when I didn't have. And I think that's the element of leadership that is in here that you can't learn in a classroom, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, one of the things we started the top of the call with is this whole concept of leadership for a new era. And so, why do you believe that a different type of leadership is essential as we move forward?
Oh, it's so
Not
essential.
that I'm asking a big question of
Well, I mean, there's so many angles that can come to at that, but I suppose the way the evolution of leadership in the last number of years, in the last decade, has really, the quality of leadership has diminished. I mean, we've talked about a couple of big, massive names in leadership there, and the quality of leadership and the influence and the positive influence that those men have had have really shaped society. So when we look at now, look at the manipulation of the public mindset, like I say, in making, I suppose, the not, I would say not coercing, but it's a very difficult decision for most people in public now to make a conscious decision on who they want as a leader today, because of the amount of the social media and also the manipulation tactics that comes into when it comes to governmental leadership is so huge. So to be conscious of that and compassionate to that for everyone in society, it has such I would say it leaves a sense of insecurity, inner insecurity within everyone across the world, because we're in this global village now. We live together, even though we have separate countries, we all live in the same world now. We have the access to all information. What happens in one country has a huge effect on what happens in another country. So there's there's no borders in one regard, because everything, we're influenced by every leader and whoever is coming into control and any country. So it has left and it is leaving a very, I would say, uneasy feeling, I would say, in the in our foundations of of humanity and where we are now. So I think the evolution of a new true leadership is vital at the moment to actually make people feel stable again in themselves, because we are societal based thinkers. You know, when I'm in my master's covering
Yeah.
how, you know, society is a learning environment, we learn from our leaders. The leaders are the ones that create the culture because they're like the head of the household, we'll say, you know. The
Mhm.
head of the house makes the decisions and it creates atmosphere for how everything runs in the home, and it's the same in a country. So the leader sets that tone as such. And if you feel unsafe in that home, it's not good for the health of a nation. It's not conducive to a flourishing nation. It's not
Yeah.
not going to be really tapping into people's potential and the ability for them to be able to thrive and to be able to be innovative. It's so important to be fostering that growth mindset and for someone to be modeling that, you know, because one word, one sentence from somebody in leadership actually changes the mindset of
Yeah.
everyone in that country. And we've seen that happen across the board in different countries across the world, where it starts to change the opinions of a nation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You
So
get that collective domino
yeah,
effect.
exactly. So it's so important. And at the moment, where the world is, we have many different global issues. And you know, in my students were always taking on these issues, trying to solve them. And it's amazing to see though the hope when we see all of the different nations. I always feel like I'm working for the UN or something, because I've got I've got students from all over the world, you know, and we sit together and we take on these global issues of climate change, or you know, we're working with, you know, NGOs, and how can we get this message to the public, you know. So that's a lot of what I do, is audience message. So how do we understand the problem? How do we find a message that's going to connect and engage the audience, which is the public? And how do we make that connection piece? And it's amazing, all the melting pot of cultures, when they come together, they really flourish in that diversity of mindset and
Yeah.
approach. When they come together, it's where these ingenious ideas that can change the world and come up with these amazing ideas that are so innovative and can actually solve some of the greatest problems very quickly if we come together in unison and we actually celebrate each of the different
Yeah.
nations and cultures and backgrounds, and also understand the severity of where, you know, sometimes there's difficulties in different cultures, different backgrounds, and taking all of that learning from those difficulties as well, that integration of that past, that history, and we can help solve those problems in a much faster, more effective way. So I think that's why it's so important, because we're rising to meet the challenges of today
Mhm.
through effective leadership.
And you know, as you were talking, and you were talking about models, and you know, the how leaders model things, I think, you know, one of the reasons I think that our leadership model is required to change is history is very telling. And we have seasons of time. You know, I am a Black woman living in North America, so we have the power structure that instituted slavery. Now slavery has occurred all over the world, and that's an authoritative, marginalizing, oppressive authority where one group wins and another group loses. That's kind of where it is. I think the other thing that's really scary about authoritative or positional leadership is that it takes away to a certain extent personal responsibility, in that was the decision the leadership made. I don't have much responsibility. I'm just doing what I am told. And so we see a lot of that, and we see a lot of indoctrination into ideas and ideations that are one group wins and one group loses, right? And I really think that a new model, as you're talking about, is necessary, that is much more inclusive, that is much more built in collaboration and in personal responsibility. You know, when I work with teams, one of the things I talk about is you lead where you stand. None of us can absolve ourselves of the responsibility to lead if we are going to be active citizens, parents, individuals. You lead where you stand, and how life unfolds, particularly your life, you have a say. If I lead my life and I take responsibility, I am going to influence those around me. And so I think we're moving, and we see it with our youth to a certain extent. And people are like, they're so rebellious, they're not listening, they want to do their own thing. I think one of the really coolest things, there's a group of them that are so in thought and so in different. I need different. Do they actually know where they're going? Not necessarily yet. However, they have the courage to say, this isn't working. I don't like what I see. I want to opt out of this game, but I'm going to go find another game, another way. And there's something healthy about that, because we have evidence that how we've led for the past decade, with the exception of some leaders who are very aware and connected to those who are marginalized, connected to those who are struggling, to do different.
Yeah, I love that. And what's come to mind there for me, I'm thinking about a phrase sometimes I use is, it's so important to harness potential, not harvest it. Harvest.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, that was good.
Because when we're harnessing, there's always going to be that energy, pushing us momentum forward. When we harvest, when the famine comes, we're starving. And that's what we're seeing now with AI, because we haven't been developing our young people it's been a model that was established in the Industrial Revolution to take human beings and to train them to repeat a task for an outcome, like a machine, basically. Now we've got to the stage where we even have AI that can actually do so much more than just machines can do. It has its own form of intelligence. So our stagnancy around understanding the innate and the absolute massive potential that human beings have within them is really coming to the forefront now, because we've been questioning it. What is unique about a human, or being human, opposed to a machine as such? And I would say that every single person that comes to this planet has a specific talent and trait that can flourish and nourish the whole of society. And if we focus on that, then we're going to create a beautiful new future, because that is harnessing the potential, not harvesting and just taking that potential and using it, and then it's gone.
And you know, what's so key about what you're saying in terms of harnessing, not harvesting, and that we all come with a unique gift. I think the differentiator, as you mentioned, is that there's one thing when we do cookie cutter education, and you memorize and spit out, memorize and spit out, memorize and spit out. I think one of my blessings, thank you, higher power above, is that I wasn't very good at memorizing because I didn't really have the attention span as a child to memorize. I had a hard time sitting in a classroom because once again, I didn't have the attention span. However, if you just say to me, Suzanne, go figure this out, I'm fully at attention. And I think for me, what was the gift I was given was, even when I didn't understand, my mother would tell me, go figure it out. There's no such word as can't. Go figure it out. So I learned at a very age to problem solve. We were lower income, working mom, nothing really handed to us. So you want something, figure it out. And so that ability to know I'm going to land on my 2 feet, if I could just figure this out and know that I will, is really the beginning of leading self, and is the beginning of leadership. I think we have not asked members of society to figure things out. We've told them memorize, regurgitate, and fill this slot. And now we're in a time where memorizing and regurgitating and filling a slot, well, slots are being filled by machines. And now you have a society going, well, what do I do? And a lot of people aren't prepared to figure things out.
It's
And
not
we
been trained, you know, they haven't had the
know.
training, they haven't, like you say, it's kind of, you know, I suppose it was a silver lining on the cloud for yourself that you got that training in yourself. And for design, that's what we do. We problem solve, trial and error until we find a solution, just iteration after iteration after iteration.
Failure
Yeah,
after failure,
it-
challenge
failing
after
forward, you know,
absolutely.
you
And
know.
how, and you know, you listen to our society, and we've been educated that failure is not an option. You fail, you're dumb. You fail, you're not good enough. You fail, and you are a failure. Versus fail, pick something up, learn the lesson, keep moving. So, and to me, that's where leadership is born. So it makes sense that the only model that's working is authority. So we gotta look up, what do I need to do? What do you want me to do? Okay, I can do that. And when there's an absence of instruction,
Mm.
people are like, well, the leaders are failing. There's no one leading me. No, there's not, because you're capable.
Yeah, that's such a massive point. Actually, we talked about before about the the awareness that we have this colonial mindset still in our awareness, in our consciousness. So that is exactly what you're just talking about there, is that especially, you know, even in Ireland, you know, where we are a republic for the last 100 years, but have we actually, are we actually free
Yeah.
in our state of mind? And
Yes.
that's why I call my book A Free State of Mind, because that's the question. Are we repeating what was done to us in, you know, growing or being ruled with an authoritative figure? And then we just do the same back to our own society, to our children, and you're being told what to do. So you're actually training conformity, not not inspired action as such, you know, not innovation, you know. So then it is very difficult to, when you've been trained in so many different aspects of your life to conform, and then you're told be innovative now because, and change very quickly now because society is changing. So you have to catch up, and I just don't know how to catch up because
Absolutely.
my brain doesn't work that way. And then that's what we were talking about, all the obstacles that you have to break on that way to becoming some
Yes.
type of leader. And that is the
Yeah.
path. That's the quest, you know?
Oh my goodness, this is such a great conversation. And I tell you, I'm gonna suggest we put a pin in it there. And I know people, you're like, a pin in it here? Yes,
To be continued.
to be continued for sure. Because I think this is so key when we ask ourselves, am I truly free? Or has colonialism, racism, oppression, the caste system, like all the different systems that have us not exercise free will to the level of our capability, how is it impacting us in a world that's changing so rapidly? I think the other part is I may want to do different intellectually. And somebody said, some people said that when I leave home, I am never doing that with my family. And then you see yourself repeating and saying, because the intellectual gymnastics is not the beingness. And so the question that I want to come back and talk about, and it may be one or two more calls, is how do I move from the desire mentally to the actual application that can only come through transformation?
Yeah.
Oh my.
That's it. That's the solution. What a great place to end.
Oh,
As we say in
okay.
Ireland, just a taste of more of that.
Oh my goodness. So if you joined us late and you're wondering, who is this brilliant soul you're sitting down with? This is Carolyn Murphy. She hails from Dublin, Ireland. Brilliant lady, author and design consultant, and so much more, educator. And I sat down and said, I need to have more conversations with this woman. So we're going to have it publicly. Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Can't wait.
So, as I was preparing for the interview, and first of all, thank you so much for your generosity of spirit. Thank you so much for saying, yes, I will sit down with you and we will have a series of, Are These Not Juicy Conversations? We're going to have a series of juicy conversations that will stretch us and stretch you, right? So as we part, I always try to go, okay, what's a great thought that would align kind of with this conversation? So this one is none other by Jim Rohn. I've had the privilege of seeing the late Jim Rohn speak about 5 times, brilliant man. And he says, the challenge of leadership is to be strong, not rude, to be kind, but not weak, to be bold, but not a bully, to be thoughtful, but not lazy, to be humble, but not timid, be proud, but not arrogant, have humor, but without folly. That is from the late Jim Rohn. So we're going to leave you with that. Carolyn, thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, Susan. It was just a treat,
Oh,
absolutely loved it.
pleasure is mine. Remember, the first person you must lead is yourself, and influence is a byproduct of self-leadership. As we part, know you are brilliant, know you are oh so very special, and we do this work because the world is waiting. This is the Influencers Journey Show. Take care, blessings, and we'll see you here next week.
Thank you all for tuning in to the Influencers Journey. Join us every week as we continue to explore the stories behind the leaders who inspire us all. Remember, the first person you lead is yourself, and influence is a byproduct of inspired action. Until next time, know you are brilliant, know you are special, and the world is waiting for your unique gift. This is the Influencer's Journey.